Hello friends, Dave Robinson from the Underwood Media Network. Go away. Intrusive. Jeez Louise. Just trying to conduct an interview here, friends. Broadcasting live from GenCon2016, our continuing coverage, exploring the modern storyteller here at probably Gen Vegas is what I've started calling it, Gen Vegas, with all the sensory overload. And speaking of sensory overload, friends, sitting beside me, the mighty Michael R. Underwood, author of many tales of urban fantasy, of weird superhero fantasy, exploring many levels of weaving of genre, weaving of narratives into different tales. Also, North American rep for Angry Robot Books. Michael, we have been contacting gamers, we've been contacting artists, authors. We're exploring the modern storytellers, exploring the shifts in narrative tone. Obviously, since this is Gen Con, we're exploring it from a game perspective. But even, especially you, I think, you are definitely one of the, I was going to say a pioneer, but really you're an explorer of your own narrative forms, of your own types of stories that you want to tell by weaving different genres together in a way that makes sense to you. This modern age of self-pub, small pub, indie pub, would you have been able to make those explorations without that?
I think at any given time in history and where people are telling stories and how there's like the middle and there are the edges, you know, and for a few years we've had kind of the middle of the fantasy publishing world has been epic fantasy and dark fantasy.
Right.
And a few years ago there was a small blip of the new weird where innovation in setting and fusing together science fiction, fantasy, and horror was the thing. But when there's a movement either on the rise or on the decline, you always have people who are trying to push something farther up or who are pushing against a trend. So you have, in dark fantasy, then you have people like Catherine Addison with the Goblin Emperor exploring a much more optimistic, hopeful, kind of brighter fantasy. And that in any orchestra, you're going to have soloists, and then you're going to have kind of counterpoint like tunes and sub-themes. So what I try to do is take the cultural inheritance that I have in terms of the books and films and comics that I've consumed and enjoyed, and find a way to push something forward or to provide a counter narrative. Because my Genrenauts series, a lot of what it does, in addition to being kind of fun and explorations of genre, is also kind of narratively picking a fight with parts of individual genres that I don't like, or ways that people erase or obscure or underplay aspects. Like in the first book, which is Western focused,
right,
I decided that I wanted to make sure to have Mexican American characters in the forefront, because a lot of the actual historical cowboys were Latino or Hispanic, or they were black. And
those have been whitewashed through our history.
Precisely. You know, we look at the historical materials, and these are a lot of people on the borders, and these were places where you could have opportunities where the kind of European-descended colonialist forces were not as strong. And then we have the John Wayne version of the Western narrative, where it is very much the white man's manifest destiny, and that the reality was more complicated than that. And with a story like this, or with other ones later on, I'm trying to find a balance between showing the way that people have assumptions, how we construct those assumptions, and then also presenting alternatives to those.
So you really are, in addition to it being a very meta experience of exploring something that we all love as fans of genre fiction, you can actually kind of, as you say, pick a fight or cast illustrate or showcase a discrepancy or even an injustice that has happened.
Yeah, because the characters themselves they are trained storytellers and they're experts in these genres. You know, as we are going through the adventure with them, we have what they're saying and what they're doing, and then we have their analysis of it. You know, whereas they'll push something to fit into the expected paths or tropes of a world, but then they'll jump back and comment on it about how, oh well, in real New York, a black man couldn't catch a cab if he was on fire. Like the bits of racism or prejudice that are really evident in our world that either do or don't play out in narrative or they're either like exaggerated or they're really downplayed. And because I have characters who exist at those boundaries between storyteller and people embodying a narrative, I can really do a lot with their perspective on things as an accent and a way to deepen just a standard action-adventure kind of narrative, because these stories are first and foremost adventures and romps through these different types of stories. But then I'm trying to say something more in addition.
You're balancing the line between making an appealing story that people want to read and actually driving forward not an agenda, but certainly a message or an awareness awakening of sorts.
Yeah, because I come from an academic background, so I did a master's in folklore studies, mostly on tabletop RPGs, so Gen Con is one of my favorite places. And the PhD that I was going to do was media studies focused. It was looking at how we use stories in different purposes, how a subculture like gamers or science fiction fantasy fans are using narratives to kind of form personal identities to use as psychological narrative modeling. So a lot of what I end up writing is taking the questions that I wanted to address as an academic, and now that I've left the academy, I'm investigating them through fiction.
That's fabulous. And really, when you, again, looking at the modern storytelling, the environment that we find ourselves in, sorry, you're looking at, there we go. Don't look at me, look at him. You have the opportunity to do that, to explore those questions that you had from an academic standpoint, and now in this environment where writers' stories can be introduced to a possibly eager public very easily, you have that opportunity. We've talked with a bunch of people about how a lot of the revolutions, the upstarts, the changes and shifts in genre have started at this indie level as people have explored that. And you're kind of one of those rebel rousers as you explore with your Genrenauts series.
Yeah, and I've learned and been studying what a lot of people who came before me have done. When I was putting together Genrenauts as a series of novellas, I did so because I'd seen other writers working in that form. Matt Wallace with his Slingers series,
yes.
Sean Platt and Johnny B. Truant with The Beam, or Platt and Wright with Yesterday's Gone. That there are people who are striking these paths, and I came later to the self-pub, indie pub world because coming from a traditional background, I wanted to see how things were developing and make sure that people in that space were building and holding up to degrees of professionalism, which they've done very quickly. The self-pub world has built up and raised the bar of this is what we expect of ourselves, this is how we're going to prove to an audience that we're putting out quality work and that it's not just anything that's fly by night. So what we have is opportunities to figure out how do you want to get your story out, what do you want from it as a business venture or as a storyteller, so that we have people who publish to Wattpad and they reach millions of readers. But that's not a business model in terms of making money off of that.
Because
that's
a
just
message model more than anything else.
It's a way to communicate, to get your story out there. If you're looking to have storytelling be a profession, you have a lot of different approaches. And for me, I view each of them as just a sales strategy or as a business strategy with positives and negatives. Going traditional, you have the opportunity to get a huge force multiplier and get out in front of people with publicity, marketing, bookstore placement, but then you're trading a larger percentage because you are paying out a lot of people. You're forming a partnership and giving a slice of the pie to a lot of different people within one house, so it becomes a big slice.
But also offloading a lot of the work
precisely
to those other individuals, which shortens the curve of production and output.
Right, because you can bring in experts, or you can partner with people who have decades of experience in companies that have been around for 100 years or more, and focus your attention either on producing more work more rapidly or on knowing that I've got this one series that's mostly taken care of, so I'm going to be able to merchandise my independent or my small press series. And you can build a diverse publishing portfolio where you've got some work over here, some work over here, you've got several different companies invested in you as a storyteller, and you can figure out which ways you want to build your platform so that over time you become less reliant on third-party systems to get access to your readers or your customers or your fans. Usually when you're building a platform, you have to use those systems because otherwise discovery is almost impossible unless you're hand selling one person at a time. But
which can take a while.
It doesn't scale well.
Right.
But so you can be on Twitter, on Periscope, you can be on YouTube. You find ways to get your work out there and to communicate with people and build a community of readers or of storytellers, and you figure out how to align what you're doing as a storyteller, like how you're writing, what projects you're doing, with how you want to communicate with people, so that you're not just selling one series and then selling another series. You're building a network of material and expectations of what people can hope for and expect from you, so that you're not just, you're an author, but you're also a brand. And what that really means is that you're creating consistent expectations of what people are going to get out of an experience with you as a storyteller, or when you're talking about business, so that they can come to trust you. You can use that trust to support your own work, but to also enrich the community by directing people's attention to other great works.
Friends, this is why I so enjoy talking to Michael R. Underwood. Every experience really, there's part of it is very passionate, and we're talking about a business and a craft that we're both very interested in. The other part is my brain is taking notes.
Oh, yeah.
Because Mike's got some incredible insights. Do check out his blog at Michael R. Underwood, right?
michaelrunderwood.com.
michaelrunderwood.com. Check out the Genrenauts series, the Ray Reese series. Let's see. The skull body.
Shield and Crocus.
Shield and Crocus. I was going to get there, I swear to God. All of his fabulous works out there. Michael, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Friends, the awesomeness continues here at GenCon 2016. We will be back with even more. Is it possible? Yes, it is. Well, we got to go now. Talk to you later.